Hold on, what game are we playing here?
We're playing Bunkers and Badasses, baby!
When I first heard about Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, I didn't rush to pick it up. Having been a long-time fan of the Borderlands series, I've gotten used to the chaotic gunfight and random humour and lots of loot. But something about this spin-off just made me hesitate. Maybe I was experiencing some franchise fatigue, or it was just a worry that this Assault on Dragon Keep style game just stretched the genre a bit too thin. But eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I hopped into the world of Wonderlands. To be honest, I was remarkably surprised at how much I enjoyed it. What I expected to be a half-hearted fantasy reskin of a Borderlands game turned out to be a vibrant, hilarious, and remarkably self-aware adventure that pulled me in and really never let me go. And this is the thing, it wasn't just chaos for chaos's sake, it was chaos that was carefully crafted. The most striking thing about Wonderlands is its narrative framing. The game takes place within Bunkers and Badasses, which is a clear homage to Dungeons & Dragons, and this framing grants the story a carefree and almost reckless attitude. And to be honest, one that ends up feeling incredibly refreshing and quite freeing for the Borderlands franchise. Because the world is quite literally being made up on the fly by Tiny Tina. There is no need for the usual narrative scaffolding, because events can and do change mid-sequence. Because one moment you're chasing a noble knight and then the next you're dealing with undead pirates purely due to the fact that Tiny Tina has just got on board with the story and wants to try something new. It's quite remarkable. The improvisational storytelling works because it's backed by strong writing and even stronger performances. Ashley Birch continues to make Tiny Tina lovable and unhinged as usual, but it's the celebrity cast that elevates things. Andy Samberg, Wanda Sykes, and Will Arnett bring their own unique quirks to the table, and their characters feel like exaggerated versions of themselves. It's as if they're not just playing the roles, they're playing characters in a tabletop campaign, embodying that kind of awkward friend who just can't stay in character, or the edgy guy who just wants to take things way too seriously. It's this layer of role-playing within role-playing that turns what could be a narrative nonsense moment into a smart, layered parody of fantasy storytelling. Now of course, a Borderlands game lives and dies by its gameplay, and to be honest, Wonderlands is content to not just coast on narrative novelty, instead it reinvents core mechanics in clever ways. Gone are grenades replaced by spells, which is an inspired decision that not only reinforces the fantasy setting, but opens up new layers for combat customization. Spells are not just part of your skill tree, they are items that you pick up, and there are so many different variations of spells that you can choose from, and so the possibilities for your customization are completely endless. As someone who played as a Graveborn, I found my class skills to be literal lifesavers. My companion could hold off mobs while I clutched a kill from the brink of death, and the cooldowns for these skills were long enough that they felt earned, unlike other spammable abilities in Borderlands 3 and Borderlands 2, which make timings and strategies genuinely less important in those games and made them more meaningful in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Now, that being said, I did find the weapon pool to be a bit lacking. I often held on to guns a lot longer than I wanted to, simply because nothing else better came along. And for me, the laser shotguns in particular felt very disappointing and underpowered, even in their legendary variants. But I will say some of the weapons in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands are entirely unique. I had a shotgun at one point that would literally rain arrows on the ground, and I held onto that gun for so long just because it was so cool. Now, to be honest, this was a rare moment where chaos felt less crafted and just more like a content oversight from Gearbox. But still, the inclusion of spell variety helped offset this limitation by giving me tools that felt fresh and thematically appropriate in Bunkers and Badasses. Another big surprise was the game's overworld, literally a tabletop map, complete with bottle caps, junk food, and snack crumbs, and everything you can think of, all things that I would imagine that Tiny Tina would just leave on her Bunkers and Badasses map. And this was a clever shift away from the sprawling, interconnected zones of prior Borderlands games. The overworld isn't just cute, it's functional. It made exploration more digestible. I didn't feel overwhelmed by dozens of markers and distractions, and the optional encounters of the overworld map were easy to dodge if I wasn't in the mood for a fight, but still rewarding enough if I did stop to engage with them, or if they caught up to me. That's the kind of reward loop that Borderlands has always excelled at, but here it's tied to a system that feels more relaxed and fun and easy to explore, rather than the extensive open worlds seen in prior Borderlands games. And for me, this is one thing that I really did appreciate in comparison to prior Borderlands games, where each area is a massive sprawling map, whereas this game made you feel like you were naturally progressing through the different zones, and so you kind of felt a bit more complete with the overall experience. And this is because the tabletop map is split up into different sections depending on where you are in the story, so you naturally move up to them until you reach the final boss. And I can't forget to mention the shrine pieces that are scattered throughout, which gave me an actual reason to poke around, offering permanent buffs like increased XP or loot luck. And this is one thing that I really prefer in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands in comparison to other Borderlands games. With the massive open world areas in prior Borderlands games, I don't feel like I explore the map as extensively as I did this smaller, more condensed tabletop map. And I'm not saying to move this format into newer Borderlands games because thematically I don't believe it would work, but if there was a potential sequel to Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, I would love to see it return. It's just another example of how Wonderlands takes chaotic elements like random encounters and tabletop mechanics and smoothens them out into an experience that respects my time and my curiosity. Which is something that a lot of games don't do these days. Instead, they want to bloat out the experience so you play for as long as possible. So hats off to you, Gearbox, on this one. I'm really happy with it. The real stars of Wonderlands, though, are the side quests. There are just the right amount of them, enough to add depth, and not too many as though I feel like I'm drowning in a checklist. But more importantly, they're funny. The structure of quests is often familiar to everyone, kill this or collect that, but the writing is where the game shines. One standout moment for me kind of involved being sent to talk to an NPC, except Valentine and Fret, your companions, become convinced that the real villain was just some random guy in a blue hat next to the NPC. And even though Tiny Tina insists that this person in a blue hat is just a background character, they won't let it go. They will not. So she just rewrites the entire story in real time, just saying, fine, he's a cult leader now. Happy? And that's just what makes this game sing to me. It doesn't just allow for chaos, it invites it, then turns it into a punchline. As the narrator, Tiny Tina isn't just describing your journey, she's reacting to it, editing it, and sabotaging it in real time. The recursive loop between player and characters and the creator is something I've rarely seen pulled off so well. It's narrative whiplash that somehow never throws you off and is always a blast. Now, even though I've been singing praise for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, I won't pretend that everything landed perfectly. The Chaos Chamber, Wonderland's endgame content, is repetitive wave-based content that never really hooked me at all. Now sure, there's great loot at the end of it, and modifiers can add some spice, but it's lacking in the inventive energy of the main game. It just feels a little more like a checkbox than a playground. And I ran the Chaos Chamber a few times, but quickly found myself moving on once the quests were done. Worse still are the DLCs. Even when heavily discounted, they offer almost nothing in substance, each one clocking in at about 10 minutes or so. They're narratively shallow, mechanically uninspired, and don't really justify the Season Pass's price tag, which is about $24.99. It is a disappointing contrast to the creativity of the base game, and a missed opportunity to expand the world of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands in meaningful ways, because Borderlands has always been known for its great DLCs, and it's just such a shame it wasn't represented the same way in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Still, even with these stumbles, the core experience remained strong. Leveling was a bit slow, yes, but never so much that it hindered my progress. And the balance between chaos and clarity in the campaign made it easy to stay engaged without feeling overwhelmed or burnt out. And yet, as fun as Wonderlands was, it's hard not to look towards the future with a mix of hope and caution. With Borderlands 4 on the horizon, excitement should be the natural response, right? But instead, things have gotten a little messy. Gearbox's CEO Randy Pitchford has sparked some controversy with a tweet suggesting that only real fans would appreciate what's coming next. And for a series that thrives on its community and humour and accessibility, that kind of comment felt quite off-putting. Even though he has stepped away from this comment, it's just a reflection of how turbulent gaming is going to be. We're at a point in time where games are costing more than ever, but to put out something along those lines by saying that only real fans will pick up the game is something really out of pocket. And I don't think that it will necessarily hurt the sales of Borderlands 4, but it's just something that's going to be another stain on the company's reputation, especially Randy's. And to wrap things up, in the end, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is a game that dares to be silly, strange, and remarkably self-aware, and it really does work. It takes the strange DNA of the Borderlands franchise and filters it through a D&D parody, resulting in something that feels surprisingly fresh, even though we've seen something similar in Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep. I finished Tiny Tina's Wonderland in about 20 hours, and it really doesn't overstay its welcome. It's really in that sweet spot. Not to mention, it doesn't ask me to take anything too seriously, and that's including itself. That's what made Tiny Tina's Wonderland so charming. Yes, the endgame might be a bit thin, yes, the loot could have a little bit more variety, but those feel like minor critiques in the grand scheme of things. What I'll remember is the clever moments of subversion, the feeling of being in a tabletop world held together by duct tape, dice, and bottle caps, and just pure imagination. I never really expected to like this game as much as I did, and that might really be the best compliment that I can ever give it. So if Gearbox are ever going to consider making a Tiny Tina's Wonderlands 2, I'll be sure to have my money in hand, and my dice in hand too. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, then subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.